2 years had passed since the last scout ship vanished without trace, and the Galactic Council found itself facing an unprecedented crisis. 3 of their most elite intelligence teams had disappeared while studying a primitive pre-spaceflight species, and each mission's final transmissions had spoken of being changed by contact with humans. The Great Hall of Zentara Prime buzzed with tension as representatives from 12 species debated what action to take. War Chief Torgon of the Hegemony paced before the assembled delegates, his scarred face grim with determination as he outlined his faction's position. "The evidence is clear," Torgon declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. 3 separate missions have been compromised by these humans. Our scouts were either captured, killed, or somehow corrupted by what they observed. This confirms our worst fears about humanity's dangerous nature. Ambassador Zixthal of the Cathari, who had originally proposed the scouting missions, stood to address the council. His crystalline form had lost some of its usual brilliance, dimmed by worry about the fate of Commander Silneth and her team. "We must consider the possibility that our scouts were not destroyed, but chose to remain on Earth for reasons we do not yet understand." The suggestion sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. The idea that trained intelligence operatives would abandon their missions and their own species was almost too disturbing to contemplate. Yet it was the only explanation that made sense given the evidence. Deep thinker Enlaz of the Philosopher's Circle rose slowly, her ancient form supported by gravity manipulators. "Perhaps we have been asking the wrong questions," she said thoughtfully. "Instead of wondering whether humans are dangerous, we should be asking what our scouts discovered that was important enough to make them abandon everything they had known before." War Chief Torgon's response was immediate and forceful. "It does not matter what they discovered. The fact remains that humanity has somehow neutralized 3 of our best teams without even achieving spaceflight. Imagine what they could do if they developed faster-than-light travel, while still in their current primitive state." The debate continued for hours as various factions presented their arguments. The military representatives pushed for immediate sterilization of Earth before humanity could become a galactic threat. The scientific community argued for continued observation using unmanned probes. The diplomatic corps suggested attempting peaceful first contact to assess human intentions directly. Elder Var then had remained silent throughout the discussions, but finally stood to address the council. His voice carried the weight of millennia as he spoke. "I have lived through the rise and fall of countless civilizations. I have seen species transform from primitive hunters to galactic empires, and I have witnessed the destruction that follows when we make decisions based on fear rather than understanding." The ancient Eldraki's words commanded attention from every delegate in the chamber. When Var then spoke, others listened carefully. "We are missing something fundamental about this situation. Our scouts were not defeated by superior technology or military force. They were changed by something they observed in human behavior. Until we understand what that something is, we cannot make an informed decision about humanity's future." Before anyone could respond to Varthan's statement, the chamber's communication systems activated with an urgent priority signal. The display screens around the room flickered to life, showing the worried face of Monitor Captain Yel Nara from the Deep Space Observation Station at Kepler 4042 Council members. Captain Yel Nara reported, her voice tight with concern. "We are receiving an artificial signal from the direction of Earth's solar system. The transmission appears to be directed toward known galactic communication frequencies. The humans are trying to contact us." A stunned silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Somehow humanity had not only detected the presence of alien technology in their solar system, but had also figured out how to broadcast messages that could reach the galactic community. "Play the transmission," Elder Var then commanded, his voice betraying the first hint of emotion he had shown in centuries. The chamber's speakers crackled to life with a clear human voice speaking in what their translation systems identified as English. "To whoever is watching us from out there, we know you're here. We found evidence of your ships in the asteroid belt and on the far side of our moon. We also found your friends who crashed in our deserts and forests." The voice continued with a tone that was simultaneously respectful and confident. "Your people are safe. We've been taking care of them and learning from them. They've told us about the galaxy and about your concerns regarding our species. We understand why you might be worried about us, but we'd like the chance to show you who we really are." War Chief Torgon's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. They have captured our scouts and are holding them hostage, he snarled. This confirms their hostile intentions. We must respond with immediate force before they can extract more information from our people. But the transmission was not finished. The human voice continued with words that stunned the entire council into silence. We want you to know that your friends chose to stay with us. They weren't captured or coerced. When we offered to help them repair their ships and return home, they asked if they could remain on Earth to continue their research. The broadcast included visual footage that appeared on the chamber's display screens. Commander Silneth of the Kethari was shown working alongside human scientists in what appeared to be a clean energy research facility. The Vorthok agents were collaborating with human doctors and engineers, sharing their knowledge freely with their former targets. Most shocking of all was footage of Elder Wisepath standing before a mixed group of human and alien researchers, apparently teaching a seminar on interstellar ethics and galactic history. These are our friends now, the human voice continued. They've taught us so much about the universe and about ourselves. We hope that someday you'll give us the chance to be your friends too. We know we're not perfect, but we're trying to become better. Maybe we can learn from each other. The transmission ended with coordinates for a meeting location in neutral space and an invitation for official diplomatic contact. The humans had even included detailed specifications for compatible life support systems and communication protocols, apparently provided by their alien guests. Ambassador Zixthal was the first to break the stunned silence that followed. They are not holding our people prisoner, he said quietly. Our scouts chose to stay because they found something worth staying for. Deep Thinker Endless nodded slowly. The humans are offering us friendship instead of demanding submission. They are sharing their knowledge instead of hoarding it for military advantage. This behavior is unprecedented in our experience with primitive species. Elder Var then stood again, his ancient form somehow seeming younger and more vital than it had in centuries. I propose that we accept their invitation for diplomatic contact. We have spent enough time trying to judge humanity from a distance. It is time to meet them face to face and learn what our scouts discovered. The vote was closer than anyone had expected, but the diplomatic faction prevailed by a narrow margin. Within one standard galactic month, a carefully selected delegation would travel to Earth's solar system. For the first official contact between humanity and the galactic community, the delegation ship that approached Earth 6 weeks later was met not by weapons or demands for surrender, but by a celebration. Human space stations had been decorated with lights and artwork representing cultures from across their planet. Musicians from dozens of nations had composed special pieces to welcome their galactic visitors. As the alien delegates disembarked at the International Space Station, they were greeted by children from Earth's schools who had created handmade gifts and drawings, depicting humans and aliens working together among the stars. One small girl named Katie Bell approached Ambassador Zixthal with a crayon drawing showing crystalline beings and humans building cities on distant worlds. My mom says you were scared of us, Katie said, looking up at the towering Kethari with curiosity rather than fear. But we're not scary. We just want to be friends and learn about the stars. Ambassador Zixthal knelt down to the child's level, his crystalline form shifting to create a more comforting appearance. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he found himself struggling to maintain professional composure as he accepted the drawing from Katie's small hands. In that moment, he finally understood what the scouts had tried to explain in their final transmissions. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to see enemies as potential friends, to transform fear into curiosity, and to choose hope over despair even when facing the unknown. The galaxy had sent scouts to watch Earth, expecting to find a threat that needed to be contained or eliminated. Instead, they had discovered a species that welcomed strangers, shared their knowledge freely, and somehow managed to make friends out of those who had come to judge them. None of the scouts had returned, because they had found something better than their original mission. They had found a home among a species that offered acceptance instead of suspicion, cooperation instead of domination, and hope instead of fear. The loss of 2 complete scouting teams had shaken the Galactic Council to its core, but it also made them more determined than ever to understand what was happening on Earth. For their third and final mission, they turned to the most experienced and scientifically advanced species in the galaxy. The Eldraki Elder Wisepath had lived for over 3,000 years, and had personally overseen the development of 47 different civilizations from primitive tribes to spacefaring empires. If anyone could solve the mystery of human behavior and explain what had happened to the previous scout teams, it would be him. His research team consisted of Mindwalker, a specialist in neural pattern analysis and truth seeker, an expert in behavioral modeling and prediction. Together, they represented thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about how intelligent species developed and functioned. Unlike the previous missions, the Eldraki chose to maintain complete distance from human society. They established a sophisticated observation post on the far side of Earth's moon, using advanced scanning technology that could monitor human neural activity and behavior patterns from orbit without any risk of detection or direct contact. Their equipment was capable of reading human thoughts and emotions from hundreds of thousands of miles away, creating detailed psychological profiles of individuals and groups across the entire planet. The Eldraki approach was purely scientific, treating humans as fascinating specimens to be studied and cataloged, rather than potential threats to be assessed. What they discovered during their first month of observation completely shattered their understanding of how intelligent life was supposed to work. Human neural patterns showed a unique structure that allowed them to form emotional bonds with virtually anything. Family members, strangers, animals, abstract concepts, and even inanimate objects. More disturbing was the humans' ability to override their own survival instincts when these emotional bonds were threatened. Mindwalker documented thousands of cases where humans chose to endanger themselves to protect others, often acting against their own rational self-interest in Phoenix. They observed a human mother named Rebecca Clark, who donated a kidney to her sick daughter, permanently weakening her own health to strengthen another person. When the daughter died in a car accident 6 months later, Rebecca channeled her grief into volunteering at a children's hospital, spending her free time comforting other families facing similar losses. The Eldraki termed this behavior illogical grief conversion, but could not explain how it functioned or why it had evolved. In their experience, the death of offspring typically caused parents to focus more intensely on protecting their remaining children, not to redirect their energy toward helping unrelated individuals. Truth Seeker concentrated his analysis on human military units and discovered something that defied every known principle of combat psychology. Human soldiers became stronger and more effective when fighting to protect their companions rather than when fighting for personal survival or advancement. During a conflict in Afghanistan, they observed a unit of American soldiers who were pinned down by enemy fire in a valley with no clear escape route. Private First Class Ryan Murphy, barely 20 years old, spotted a wounded comrade, lying in an exposed position where enemy snipers could easily target him. Ryan left the safety of his covered position and ran across open ground under heavy fire to reach the wounded soldier. He was shot twice during the rescue but managed to drag his friend to safety before collapsing from his own injuries. When questioned later about his actions, Ryan simply said, "I couldn't leave him there. He's got a wife and kids waiting for him at home." The concept that soldiers would risk their lives more readily for others than for themselves contradicted everything the Eldraki knew about survival instincts and military effectiveness. Yet human military units consistently demonstrated higher performance levels when their members formed strong emotional bonds with each other. Elder Wise Path focused his research on human leadership structures and was astounded by the prevalence of what humans called servant leadership. Idiao studied political figures, business executives, and community organizers who regularly sacrificed their own interests to benefit the people they led. Mayor Patricia Lopez of a small California town discovered that the city's water supply was contaminated with industrial chemicals that could cause cancer and birth defects. The contamination had occurred decades earlier, long before her administration, and there was no legal requirement for her to address the problem. Instead of ignoring the issue or covering it up to avoid political consequences, Mayor Lopez used her personal savings to hire independent scientists to study the contamination. She then spent 3 years fighting federal agencies and corporate lawyers to secure funding for a complete water system replacement, knowing that the controversy would likely end her political career. The project cost millions of dollars and took 5 years to complete, during which time Mayor Lopez was voted out of office and faced numerous lawsuits from the companies responsible for the original contamination. Yet she continued advocating for her former constituents even after losing her position, working without pay to ensure the cleanup was completed properly. This pattern repeated itself across human society at every level. Corporate executives like Steve Williams took salary cuts to avoid laying off employees during economic downturns. Teachers spent their own money to buy supplies for students whose families could not afford them. Police officers and firefighters regularly risked their lives to protect strangers, receiving modest salaries in return for dangerous and stressful work. Eldraki spent months trying to understand how human civilization could function with leaders who consistently chose group benefit over personal advantage. In their experience, such behavior led to rapid selection against altruistic individuals, leaving only the most selfish and aggressive members to guide society. Yet human society not only survived, but actually seemed to thrive under these conditions. Their technology advanced rapidly, their population grew steadily, and their cultural achievements in art, music, and literature reached levels of sophistication that impressed. Even the ancient Eldraki, the mission's scientific detachment, came to an abrupt end when their long-range sensors detected a massive asteroid on a collision course with Earth. The object was over 2 miles in diameter and would impact the planet's surface, with enough force to trigger a global extinction event similar to the one that had killed Earth's dinosaurs 65 million years earlier. According to their mission parameters, the Eldraki were supposed to observe and record events without interfering in human development. The asteroid impact would provide valuable data about how species responded to planetary-scale disasters, and their recordings would be useful for future scientific research. Elder Wisepath found himself unable to maintain scientific objectivity as he watched billions of humans going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their entire species would be extinct within 6 months. He thought about Rebecca Clark working in the children's hospital, Ryan Murphy recovering from his wounds in a military hospital, and Mayor Lopez fighting for clean water in her community. For the first time in 3,000 years of scientific observation, Elder Wisepath chose to violate the fundamental principle of non-interference. He ordered his team to use their ship's gravitational manipulation systems to alter the asteroid's trajectory, knowing that the effort would overload their power cores and leave them stranded in Earth's solar system. The intervention succeeded in deflecting the asteroid, but the energy drain caused their ship to lose orbital stability and begin falling toward Earth's surface. As their vessel descended through the atmosphere, Elder Wisepath transmitted his final report to the Galactic Council. "We came here to study humans objectively and determine whether they posed a threat to galactic civilization," he reported. "Instead, we have discovered something far more significant. Humans possess a quality that we have lost somewhere in our evolution toward rationality and efficiency. They choose hope over despair, cooperation over competition, and sacrifice over survival. Council members, be warned. Humanity is not a threat to be contained or eliminated. They are a mirror that shows us what we have become and what we might become again. They have changed us in ways we did not expect and cannot fully explain. We can no longer remain objective observers. The humans do not yet know we are here, but they will soon discover our ship. When they do, they will face a choice. They can capture us for study, destroy us as invaders, or welcome us as visitors. Based on everything we have observed about human nature, I believe I know which option they will choose." The transmission ended as the Eldraki ship crashed in a remote area of the Nevada desert, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate the implications of 3 failed scouting missions and the growing evidence that their understanding of intelligent life was fundamentally flawed. 6 months after the Cathari team vanished without explanation, the Galactic Council dispatched their second scouting mission to Earth. The Vorthak were masters of infiltration and psychological analysis, capable of perfectly mimicking any species they encountered through their natural shape-shifting abilities. If anyone could understand human behavior from the inside, it would be them. Commander Drakmol led the 3-person team with the confidence that came from centuries of successful intelligence operations. His companions, Agent Kessera and Agent Nulvex, were specialists in social manipulation and behavioral analysis, respectively. Unlike the Cathari, who had observed from a distance, the Vorthak intended to live among humans and study their psychology through direct interaction. Their ship entered Earth's atmosphere during a thunderstorm over the Pacific Ocean, using the electrical activity to mask their energy signature. Within hours of landing, all 3 agents had assumed human forms and begun establishing false identities in major population centers around the globe. Drachmal chose to infiltrate the academic community in New York City, taking the appearance of a middle-aged professor and securing a position teaching anthropology at a prestigious university. The irony of studying human culture while pretending to be human was not lost on him, and he found the role particularly suited to his mission requirements. Agent Kessera established herself as a registered nurse at a major hospital in Tokyo, placing herself in an ideal position to observe human behavior during times of extreme stress and crisis. Her medical training from the Vorthak homeworld easily translated to human practices, and she quickly became valued by her colleagues for her skill and dedication. Agent Nulvex assumed the identity of a construction foreman in London, choosing a position that would allow him to study human cooperation, leadership, and decision-making in a practical working environment. His natural Vorthak strength made the physical demands of the job trivial, and he was soon managing complex building projects across the city. The first months of infiltration proceeded exactly as planned. All three agents gathered extensive data on human social structures, family relationships, and cultural practices. They documented the same violence and aggression that had concerned the Galactic Council. But they also began noticing behaviors that did not fit standard models of primitive species development. Drachmal was particularly puzzled by his students' approach to learning and competition. In one memorable incident, a student named Amy Rodriguez was taking a crucial examination that would determine whether she could keep her academic scholarship. Drachmal had deliberately made one section of the test extremely difficult, and he noticed Amy struggling with the questions. Another student, Kevin Clark, had finished early and was preparing to leave when he noticed Amy's distress. Kevin quietly slipped his completed answer sheet toward Amy, offering her the chance to copy his work and ensure a passing grade. Amy looked at the answers for a long moment, then carefully pushed the paper back to Kevin and continued working on her own responses. She failed that section of the exam and lost her scholarship as a result. When Drachmal asked her privately why she had refused Kevin's help, Amy simply said, "Because it wouldn't be right. I need to earn my grades honestly, even if it costs me everything." The concept of absolute morality independent of practical benefit was completely alien to Vorthak philosophy. In their society, success was the only meaningful measure of behavior, and any action that achieved desired results was considered acceptable. Amy's willingness to sacrifice her future for an abstract principle made no logical sense. Agent Kessera was having similar experiences at the hospital in Tokyo. During a particularly busy night shift, she observed the medical staff working 18-hour shifts to care for patients during a disease outbreak. Many of the doctors and nurses were showing signs of exhaustion, and several had family members at home who needed their attention, yet, when additional patients arrived at the emergency room, not a single staff member suggested turning them away or reducing the quality of care to save time and energy. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, who had been working for 22 hours straight, took on 3 more critical cases and refused to go home until each patient was stable. Kessera watched Dr. Tanaka break down and cry after losing an elderly patient to complications from the disease. She expected him to request time off or at least a break from the most difficult cases. Instead, he composed himself within minutes and immediately began treating the next patient. With the same level of care and attention he had given all the others, the emotional investment these humans showed in the welfare of complete strangers defied every principle of rational behavior that Kessera had been taught. Medical professionals were supposed to maintain clinical detachment to perform their duties effectively, yet these humans seemed to draw strength from their emotional connections to their patients. Agent Nulvex encountered equally confusing behavior patterns at his construction sites in London. During a particularly dangerous phase of a high-rise building project, he deliberately suggested cutting safety protocols to meet an important deadline and earn bonus payments for the entire crew. The site supervisor, Carl Peterson, rejected the proposal immediately. "Money isn't worth a man's life," Carl told him firmly. "We finish when we finish and we do it right. Anyone who can't accept that is welcome to find another job." This response made no sense from a Vorthak perspective. The bonus payments would have significantly improved the financial situation of every worker on the project, and the safety risks were relatively small. Yet Carl was willing to sacrifice substantial benefits for his entire team to reduce minor risks to individual workers. Nulvex tested this behavior repeatedly, suggesting various shortcuts and efficiency improvements that involved small increases in danger or discomfort. Each time the human workers chose safety and comfort for their colleagues over personal gain. They even protected newer workers who were still learning their jobs, voluntarily taking on additional risks to keep rookies out of dangerous situations. The most disturbing discovery came when Nulvex observed the workers' response to an accident that injured a young apprentice named Danny Williams. The injury occurred due to Danny's own mistake and inexperience, yet the entire crew immediately stopped work to help him. They provided first aid, called for medical assistance, and several workers even offered to donate vacation days so Danny could recover without losing income. This level of group cooperation in support of a member who had contributed to his own problems was unprecedented in Vorthak experience. In their society, individuals were expected to bear the consequences of their errors alone, and group resources were never wasted on those who had proven themselves incompetent. After 8 months of infiltration, all 3 agents were struggling with psychological conflicts they had never experienced before. The humans they were studying displayed consistent patterns of behavior that prioritized group welfare over individual advantage, yet somehow their society continued to function and even thrive under these conditions. Mission's cover was blown during what should have been a routine day in New York. Drakmol was walking across campus when he noticed a small human child running into a busy street while chasing a ball. A large vehicle was approaching at high speed, and the child was clearly in mortal danger without thinking. Drakmol reacted with Vorthak reflexes, moving faster than any human could and snatching the child to safety, just before the vehicle passed through the spot where she had been standing. The rescue was caught on multiple security cameras, and within hours, video footage of a human moving with impossible speed was spreading across the internet. Government agents began investigating the incident immediately, and Drakmol's false identity came under intense scrutiny. He managed to transmit one final message to his companions before going into hiding, warning them that their mission had been compromised and they needed to evacuate immediately. The last transmission from the Vorthak team was even more troubling than the Cathari report. "The humans have discovered our presence, but they are not responding with fear or aggression," Drakmol reported. "Many are expressing curiosity and even excitement about the possibility of contact with alien life. Some have offered to help us hide from their own government authorities. This behavior should not be possible according to any known model of primitive species psychology. We have been changed by what we have learned here. The mission parameters may have been fundamentally flawed." Then, like the Cathari before them, the Vorthak team disappeared into silence, leaving the Galactic Council with more questions than answers about the strange species that inhabited the small blue world. The Great Hall of Zentara Prime hummed with nervous energy as 12 different alien species gathered around the floating crystal table. The emergency session had been called after 3 months of heated debates and growing fear about a small blue planet in the outer reaches of the galaxy. Ambassador Zixthol of the Cathari stood tall, his crystalline body catching the light from the room's energy. Cores as he prepared to address the council, the humans had been broadcasting radio signals for over 100 years. Now and their progress was becoming impossible to ignore. What started as simple audio transmissions had evolved into complex digital communications that carried vast amounts of information across their planet. The Galactic Council had been monitoring these signals from a safe distance, and what they discovered made even the bravest species uncomfortable. Zixthol activated the holographic display in the center of the room, and images of Earth appeared before the assembled delegates. Cities sprawled across continents with billions of humans living in close proximity. Massive ships crossed their oceans while metal birds filled their skies. The technology was primitive by galactic standards, but it was advancing at a rate that defied all known patterns of species development. "Look at their weapons," Zixthol said as the display shifted to show nuclear explosions and military hardware. "They have learned to split atoms and turn that power into tools of destruction. They have created bombs that can level entire cities and kill millions in moments. Most concerning is that they have built thousands of these weapons and pointed them at each other." A ripple of unease passed through the council chamber. War Chief Torgan of the hegemony leaned forward, his scarred face grim with concern. His species had seen what happened when primitive races developed nuclear weapons too quickly. The results were never good. "They fight constantly," Zixthol continued as new images showed human conflicts across their history, wars that last for years or even decades. "They seem to enjoy creating new and more efficient ways to kill each other." Yet somehow they also cooperate on a global scale when it serves their purposes. The display showed human space missions, with primitive rockets carrying their kind beyond their planet's atmosphere. They had walked on their moon and sent robotic explorers to other worlds in their solar system. For a species that had only recently learned to fly, their progress in space was remarkable and terrifying. Elder Varthen of the Eldraki Council spoke next, his ancient voice carrying the weight of thousands of years of experience. "I have lived through the rise and fall of 47 civilizations," he said slowly. "I have seen species discover fire and reach for the stars. But I have never seen development this rapid or this chaotic. The Eldraki were the oldest known species in the galaxy, and their words carried tremendous authority. When Varthen spoke of concern, other species listened carefully. He had witnessed the Destroyer Wars 3,000 years ago, when another aggressive species had nearly wiped out half the galaxy before they could be stopped. The last time we saw military advancement at this pace, we lost entire worlds, Varthen continued. The Destroyers started much like these humans. Rapid technological growth, constant warfare, and an apparent lack of fear when it came to dangerous weapons. We barely survived that conflict and swore never to let it happen again. Dr. Nalaris of the Healers Union, a gentle being whose species had dedicated themselves to preserving life, added her own observations. Their medical knowledge is advancing almost as quickly as their weapons technology. They can transplant organs from one human to another, and they are beginning to understand their own genetic code. This suggests intelligence and cooperation alongside their destructive tendencies. The debate continued for hours as each species shared their analysis of human behavior. The traders spoke of human economic systems that seemed to thrive on competition and conflict. The explorers marveled at human curiosity and their willingness to risk everything to reach new places. The philosophers were puzzled by human art and music that seemed to serve no practical purpose yet appeared to be deeply important to their culture commander. Silnath of the Kethari military stood to address the council. Her species specialized in intelligence gathering and electronic surveillance, making them experts at understanding other civilizations through their communications. "We have analyzed millions of human transmissions over the past decade," she reported. "Their entertainment shows violence and conflict as normal parts of life. Their news broadcasts are filled with wars, crimes, and disasters. Yet they also produce content about love, friendship, and sacrifice that suggests complex emotional capabilities." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. A species that could feel deep emotions while simultaneously creating weapons of mass destruction was unprecedented. Most civilizations developed either emotional maturity or advanced technology first, never both at the same time. Young Ambassador Kessanel of the Harmony Collective, whose species had achieved peace through technological advancement, raised a concern that had been troubling many of the younger council members. What if we are wrong about them? What if their aggression is simply a phase that all species must pass through before reaching maturity? Should we not give them the chance to grow beyond their current limitations? War Chief Torgan's response was swift and harsh. "The galaxy cannot afford to take that risk. If we wait and they develop faster than light travel while still in their current state, they could spread their violence across countless worlds. The Destroyers taught us that prevention is always better than trying to stop a species after they have become a galactic threat." The debate raged for 3 more days as the council weighed their options. Some species argued for immediate intervention, while others pushed for continued observation. A few even suggested trying to make peaceful contact to guide human development in a more positive direction. Finally, Elder Varthen called for silence and presented the compromise that would determine Earth's fate. "We will send scouts," he announced. 3 separate missions using our best intelligence operatives. They will observe human behavior up close and report back with detailed assessments. Only then will we decide whether humanity represents a threat that must be contained or a species that deserves the chance to join the galactic community. The vote was unanimous. Within 1 standard galactic month, 3 scout ships would depart for Earth. The Kethari would go first, using their technological expertise to monitor human communications and analyze their capabilities. The Vorthak would follow, using their shape-shifting abilities to infiltrate human society and study their psychology from within. Finally, the Eldraki would conduct a comprehensive scientific analysis of human behavior patterns and decision-making processes. Each mission would have 1 full galactic year to complete their assessment and return with recommendations. If any scout team reported that humans posed a significant threat to galactic peace, containment protocols would be implemented immediately. This would likely involve destroying Earth's technological infrastructure and isolating the planet, until humanity either destroyed itself or evolved beyond its current aggressive tendencies. As the council session ended, and the various species prepared to return to their homeworlds, none of them could have imagined what would actually happen to their carefully planned scouting missions. They had sent their best operatives to watch humanity and assess their threat level, but they had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that their scouts would remain unchanged by what they observed. The Cathari scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system on a cold morning in late 2019. Commander Silnith studied the tactical display as her two-person crew began their approach toward the small blue world that had captured the galaxy's attention. The ship itself was a masterpiece of stealth technology, its crystalline hull designed to bend light and electromagnetic radiation around it, making it virtually invisible to primitive detection systems. Silnith had chosen her crew carefully for this mission. Navigator Velkus was young but brilliant, capable of plotting courses through asteroid fields while simultaneously monitoring dozens of communication channels. Engineer Tixmal had spent decades perfecting the art of remote technological infiltration, able to access any electronic system without leaving traces of his presence. Together, they represented the finest intelligence operatives the Cathari military had to offer. Their first priority was establishing a hidden observation post somewhere in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The location would provide excellent coverage of Earth's electromagnetic spectrum, while remaining safely distant from human space activities. Velkus piloted their ship between the floating rocks with practiced ease, eventually finding a suitable asteroid that could be hollowed out and converted into their base of operations. The work took 6 days of careful excavation and installation. Tixmal supervised the placement of sensor arrays and communication equipment, while Silnith reviewed their mission parameters. They were to monitor human behavior for one full galactic year, paying special attention to military capabilities, technological advancement, and social structures. The Council particularly wanted to understand human decision-making processes during times of crisis and conflict. Once their base was operational, the real work began. Tixmal immediately started intercepting human communication networks, tapping into everything from government databases to personal social media accounts. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming, with billions of humans generating constant streams of data about their thoughts, activities, and relationships. What the Cathari team discovered in those first few weeks challenged everything they thought they knew about primitive species development. Human society was indeed violent and chaotic, with conflicts raging across multiple continents and weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Yet alongside this aggression existed something the scouts had never encountered before in any other species. They watched humans rescue strangers from burning buildings, donate money to help people they would never meet, and risk their lives to save animals that served no practical purpose. In Detroit, a human named Jake Morrison spotted smoke coming from an apartment building and immediately ran inside to help evacuate the residents. He made 3 trips into the burning structure, saving an elderly couple and a family with 2 small children. Before the fire department arrived to take over, Silnith studied the security footage of Jake's actions dozens of times, trying to understand his motivation. He had no connection to the people in the building and gained nothing from helping them. In fact, he had risked serious injury or death by entering a dangerous situation that any rational being would have avoided. Yet he acted without hesitation, as if saving strangers was the most natural thing in the world. Similar examples appeared in their data every day: human medical workers treating patients during a global pandemic, often working longer hours for less pay than they could earn in other professions, teachers spending their own money to buy supplies for students whose families could not afford them, soldiers volunteering for dangerous missions to protect civilians they had never met. Velkus was particularly fascinated by human art and entertainment. "Look at this," she said one day, showing Silnith examples of human music and literature. "They create stories about heroes who sacrifice everything to save others. They write songs about love and friendship that have no practical value whatsoever, yet these things seem to be among their most treasured possessions." The navigator had discovered human mythology and religious texts that emphasized compassion, Forgiveness and self-sacrifice as the highest virtues. These concepts were not just philosophical ideals, but appeared to influence actual human behavior on a daily basis. Humans regularly chose to help others even when it cost them time, money, or personal comfort. Engineer Tixmal made an even more disturbing discovery while analyzing human internet traffic. They share knowledge freely, he reported to Silneth during one of their weekly briefings. Look at these websites where humans post detailed instructions for building everything from simple tools to complex machines. They give away information that could be sold for profit, apparently just because they want to help other humans learn and improve their lives. The concept of freely sharing valuable knowledge was alien to Cathari culture, where information was carefully guarded and traded as a precious commodity. Yet humans seemed to take pride in teaching each other new skills and solving problems together. Their scientific journals were openly available to anyone with internet access, and researchers from different countries collaborated on projects that benefited all humanity, rather than just their own nations. 6 months into their mission, the Scouts had documented thousands of examples of human kindness and cooperation, alongside evidence of their capacity for violence and destruction. The contradiction was baffling and made it impossible to classify humanity. According to standard galactic threat assessment protocols, the mission took an unexpected turn during a severe solar storm that temporarily disrupted their ship's cloaking systems. For just under 2 hours, their vessel became visible to Earth-based telescopes, and unfortunately, a human amateur astronomer named Lisa Parker was scanning that exact section of sky when it happened. Lisa immediately reported her sighting to various astronomical organizations and government agencies. Within days, human space tracking systems were focusing intense attention on the asteroid belt, using increasingly sophisticated detection methods to search for signs of alien technology. Silneth realized they had been compromised and ordered an immediate departure from their observation post. However, the solar storm had also damaged their ship's quantum drive, and the engine failed catastrophically during their attempt to leave the solar system. Their vessel crashed in a remote area of the Canadian wilderness, far from any human settlements, but close enough that rescue teams would eventually find them. The impact killed Tixmal instantly and left both Silneth and Velkas severely injured. Velkas had suffered internal damage that would prove fatal without immediate medical attention, while Silneth had sustained multiple fractures and was losing consciousness. From blood loss, they were discovered 3 days later by a human park ranger named Ben Hayes, who was conducting a routine patrol of the area. Ben found their crashed ship and immediately began providing first aid to the injured aliens, despite having no idea what species they were or whether they might be dangerous. Ben used his emergency medical training to stabilize Velkas and carefully moved Silneth to a more comfortable position. He shared his food and water with them, built a fire to keep them warm, and used his radio to call for additional supplies without revealing the true nature of the situation over the next week. Ben returned daily to check on the injured Cathari. He brought medical supplies, food, and even books to help pass the time during their recovery. When Silneth was finally able to communicate in broken English, Ben listened to their story with fascination rather than fear. "You came here to study us," Ben said with a slight smile. "Well, I guess you got a pretty good look at what we're really like." Ben helped repair their ship using supplies from his ranger station and never once asked for anything in return. When the Cathari were ready to leave, he simply wished them a safe journey and asked them to remember that not all humans were as warlike as their governments might suggest. Silneth's final transmission to the Galactic Council was brief and troubling. "The humans are not what we expected," she reported. "They possess the capacity for great violence but also for incredible compassion. They will sacrifice everything for strangers and share their knowledge freely with anyone who needs it. We have been changed by what we have observed here. Recommendation unclear. Need more time to understand what we have learned." Then the transmission ended and the council never heard from the Cathari team again.